I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm joined today by Aja Naomi King to talk about her role as Harriet Sloan on Lessons in Chemistry. And Aja, the Harriet that we see on the show is obviously very different from the one in the novel the show is based on. And from what I understand, Lee Eisenberg, the showrunner, sought you out for this part after you auditioned for a completely different one first. So I'd be interested to hear from you, how this role was pitched to you initially and whether that pitch differs from the final version that we see of Harriet on the show.
So it was so great meeting Lee because, yeah, he had this amazing idea of what he wanted to do with Harriet. So when he first approached me to start talking about it, and I had read the book since I had, gone in for a different role, I wasn't quite sure like how he was going to like capture this because I know the relationship between Harriet and Elizabeth was so essential to the story. And I didn't want it to, get muddled or become something lesser than what it was meant to be. But then when he just started talking about what he wanted to do with this and kind of expand the world in this really incredible way to offer up a fuller point of view of that time period and not deny I think very necessary representation during that time period and to get to see these parallel lives and honor that relationship still between these two women. I was really blown away. And then he started talking about wanting to dive into the Sugar Hill neighborhood and the role that Harriet would take in that. And just the housing commission with this freeway and how they'd also be linked through their relationship through Calvin and the loss of him and I was like, wow, like it was just laid out so beautifully. And I have to say, like, that can be the thing as an actor, like, you are afraid sometimes that you're being sold a bill of goods. Like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
right, like, oh,
Yeah.
you're saying you want to do all this, but then it turns into like just one scene and you're standing in the background. you know
Yeah.
but he talked so passionately about it and was so collaborative in terms of just really showing all of Harriet from her marriage and
Mhm.
her ambition and her her version of motherhood. I really found it so compelling, and of course I wanted to be involved, and he was true to his word, and that's the
Mhm.
story was like so much more than what I could have imagined. I was I am still blown away when I think about the scenes we got to shot, the just the investment and the time spent in Harriet, that she wasn't just some side character that, was, being used as a prop, but
Absolutely.
yeah, she was full, she was real, and we got to learn so much about her experience and how her experience contrasted Elizabeth's experience. And I think that was just really essential to give it that much life.
hmm Absolutely. And we're going to get into some of those aspects that you mentioned in just a second. But I also know that you did, a lot of research on the Sugar Hill community and their fight to block the construction of this freeway through their neighborhood, because it's this history that Harriet's storyline is based on. And, what were some of the discoveries that you made during this research process that, helped you enter Harriet's mindset that kind of informed how you approached playing the character?
Well, they had brought in a cultural consultant, Dr. Shamel Bell,
Mhm.
and she gave me so many resources that really helped me to dive into it. And we would just have so many discussions about like the role of like the church and the community and what all of that looked like. And then for me it was also just thinking about like my grandmothers and
Mhm.
my mother and her sisters, and because they grew up in the 50s and 60s, and they were on the East Coast, and just what that was like. So it was a lot of just trying to kind of embody what it was to be a Black woman during this time, especially when perception, I was going to say perception was, but still is
Mm,
so important, how people perceive you and how that kind of changes how you behave and how you hold yourself, like things like that. And it's like, yeah, I wanted her to have a certain vocal quality. I wanted her to have like
right.
a certain kind of energy in the spaces that she entered, because I think especially the way in which she's written and the way in which she appears in the book, and what all of that is supposed to represent. She's such a force of nature. You
Yes.
know, she is someone that is like, regardless of the world around her, like she's going to demand to be respected. She's going to demand to just be treated a certain way, and she's going to hold not only herself but others to a certain standard
Hmm.
that kind of belies her core belief that she can do something. Like she takes to action,
Yes.
which yeah, which I really love about her.
And that kind of takes me to my next question because the point where I really like understood the character is when Harriet talks about how she channels all this anger and all this pain and all this rage she feels, about the plights the Black community faces in the U.S. She channels all of that into her activism. And would you say that this kind of also explains why she went to law school to begin with and why she aspires to be a lawyer? Or what would you say was the impetus for her to kind of enter the legal field?
Yeah, I think that Harriet is the kind of person who would see the inequities around her, like all her life. A lot of people moved from the South to northern states and to western states with this idea that there would be more opportunities and life would be better. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, racism still existed. It was just a different kind of racism. It wasn't so blatant and in your face. And I think when you encounter that on a daily basis, and then when you have children, especially, there is something in you that knows that you have to do something to make it better. And I think that it's why she wanted to be more than just a legal aid, but to be a lawyer. That
Right.
she,
Yeah.
that yeah, she's passionate and she knows that she's capable and she can. I feel like Harriet believes that she can see something that others can't see, and
Mm-hmm.
she has vision for what the world can be. And that's what makes her so powerful. She's like, you might not be able to see it. You might not be able to believe in it, but I can believe because I can see it. And I'm going to make you see it. And that's why she takes action. That's why she has to lead a protest. Like she has to galvanize the people around her to
Mm-hmm.
believe in this other, better future, not just for herself, but for everyone.
Yeah. And I absolutely love that about the character. But, at the same time, we also learned that, she's kind of still had to put her career on hold, to kind of take care of her children because her husband, Charlie, is, off working, off taking these extra shifts. And, there's obviously a lot of pent up frustration in Harriet because of that. But what kind of really stands out to me is that this frustration never turns into like bitterness and never turns into hatred. And her marriage doesn't crumble because of it, which, surprised me as a viewer. That's kind of what you would expect from the storyline. And it was really refreshing in a way not to see it go in that direction. But how do you think she kind of deals with that pent up frustration? How do you think she prevents it from turning into something perhaps more intense, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, well, that was another thing that I loved about playing this character. She's not, like, you're right. She's not some frustrated, downtrodden, like, she has had her knots, like all the things that she wanted to accomplish ended up being put on the sidelines in service of her husband's needs or her family's needs. But she still prevails. Like she has this resiliency to her. And I also love that, that we got to see that in those scenes when she gets to talk about, just things not going in the order that she wanted them to go, not being able to achieve the things that she wanted when she was capable of achieving them, and
Mm-hmm.
that being struggle. But the struggle was never going to stop her, and that she could like love her children and know that she's stronger because of them, but also still desire this other thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. Like we get to understand her multiplicity, that she has many many emotions and many desires, and yes, they're conflicting, but it's all inside of her, and that we get to witness this tension in her marriage. And I love that we delve into that like, yes, there can be so much love there, but also so much frustration. And yeah, it doesn't mean that our marriage is going to end or crumble. It just means
Mhm.
that we're going to have to struggle through this together so that we can both get what we want out of it, get what we want out of it, but that there is such a core love there, this belief that even though we might see things differently or see how we are going to achieve things differently, because Paul James, who plays Charlie, my husband,
Mhm.
it's like for him, safety, creating safety,
Exactly.
is you work hard, you make money, and you kind of buy your way out of it in terms of that, having the nice house, like having the well-kept family. And for Harriet, safety is, we have to change the system, because until the system of laws that we are governed by, until they accommodate us, until they uplift us all, then there will never be any kind of safety. And you get to see that conflict and tension, but it's like, but they both want the same thing. And I think that's what makes their connection so powerful with one another. And I just, yeah, like that you see all of that it's not like, like a passing phrase or something, or an
Mhm.
implied thought, but that we really dive into it so you can fully understand just the complexities of these relationships is powerful.
Absolutely. And I think you, as a viewer, you really understand both of them, right? You understand that, that Harriet wants a career, but you also understand that Charlie is, sort of more focused on the family's safety. That's kind of, his priority. And you kind of understand why he doesn't want her to organize the sit-in, but on the other hand, you understand her why she wants to organize it. And I think it's kind of fun watching, like you said, that tension, and it just leads to some of the most interesting scenes in the show. And I just like that the show actually explored them, as you kind of said. And something that I also really liked about Harriet, and you kind of touched on that a bit, is that she's someone who's not bogged down by the obstacles placed in her path and by the hits she takes. She's someone, wouldn't you say that she's someone who's actually more propelled by them?
Yes. I mean, there's so much joy, and I think that is the thing that propels us a lot of the time, because we experience joy and love and laughter and possibility. We want more of it. We crave it. We seek it out. And it's like, how do we create that in our lives? And
Mhm.
and that's what Harriet does. Like, she's not only creating joy for herself, but for her community, for her family. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to bring that forth.
Absolutely. And I would say she also does it for her friends, which kind of takes us to her relationship with Elizabeth, played by Brie Larson, because I really believe that relationship is kind of the heart of the show. And I think, a lot has been said about what draws Elizabeth to Harriet. Above all, she really helps her navigate early motherhood. But what do you think it is, beyond their shared grief at Calvin's death, that ultimately attracts Harriet to Elizabeth?
I think for Harriet, Elizabeth is kind of like, there's a connection there in that we're both these mothers, and yes, we've both experienced this loss, but Harriet sees Elizabeth's resiliency. She sees a fighter like
Mm.
herself. Like that that first scene when, like, Elizabeth is like destroying the kitchen, like,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah.
Insane.
Like, I think Harriet is like bewildered by this woman, but also
Right.
really like impressed by her, like, and getting to learn about her and like what she's taking on her own, and just her own struggle and kind of battle to be seen. And so Harriet's like, I see you because I am you. Like, I know what you're going through, and that is what connects us. And it was so important to us that we felt like that friendship was earned,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
we didn't want to just put the two women in the same room and be like, all right, now have this conversation. But it's like, there had to be there had to be conflict. There had to be like radical honesty, like there has to be so much shared experience for them to like truly earn this friendship. And I really did feel like we accomplished that.
Absolutely. And speaking of radical honesty, we really do get these really honest exchanges between the characters because of this growing friendship, including the one in the sixth episode, after Elizabeth declines to attend the sit-in that Harriet has organized, and Harriet kind of, points out her blind spots when it comes to racial discrimination. And I feel like this scene is really kind of the crux of their friendship because it does, in some ways, put Elizabeth's allyship to test. So, what were some of the conversations you had with Brie Larson and with your director Millicent Shelton, in terms of how you wanted to execute that particular scene because it really is so important.
I mean, so much of it is underneath, and it's great that we had, all this work together and all these episodes to build up to that. That helped really just like because like I mean this the scene is so great, but it's like kind of just the energy that's sort
Yes.
of bubbling up underneath, and it comes back to the idea of safety and the idea of being seen. Like we understand Elizabeth's point of view because now she's feeling responsible for all these people. But oh God, and what was the line? Because she, when she says something, I'll make it up to you, because it's kind of like a callback to
Yeah.
Calvin saying, I'll make it up to you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for Harriet, like it's this moment of like, I see you and I really need you to see me. Because this isn't some favor that you're doing for me. Like this is about all of us. This is about our shared humanity. It goes so much deeper, and it was for me it was really like I needed Harriet to be heard. So there was almost like this clarity, this gentle directness, but this clarity because it's coming from a place of love. Like, like I love you, but I need you
Yeah.
to see me,
Mm-hmm.
and I need you to understand my experience. Because if you can't understand me, then we have no place in each other's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and all of that is behind it. And yeah, and it's like, yeah, we talk about like the energy and the feel, and it's just doing it and feeling it out and being connected to one another, and that there is like a care for each other and a space for each other. And I think, Brie did that so beautifully from the very beginning, where, because she's also a producer on the project, and so she
Mm-hmm.
was very open with me about like wanting me to take ownership over what Harriet needed to be, and if something wasn't right, like to just, let everyone know, and to like that it was mine, and
Mm-hmm.
so into that scene for me, I felt I felt very powerful as like this is what Harriet needs to do in this moment. And it's like it comes from somewhere deep inside. And I think it's such a universal, relatable feeling of
Absolutely.
when, right, like when you just need to feel understood by someone that you care about, that should care about you.
Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting that you also mentioned like the energy, because when I was watching it, I was like, if the energy was like a little bit different, the entire scene would feel different, right? Because even though obviously there's a lot of frustration there, and rightfully so, but she still says everything with such kindness. And I think that's because what you were saying earlier, their relationship is really earned. And that's why that kindness is there. And I feel like had she, delivered it in any different way, it would have come across very differently. You've got something almost no one has, a platform. What you say matters, and what you don't say matters just as much. There's such a softness to it in a way that I received it in such a specific way. I don't know if you know what I mean, but
Good. I
uh,
do, yes. And I'm glad that landed for you. Like, yeah, it has to be so open,
yes.
it's like, it's because it's like, yeah, Harriet is so heart open in that moment. Like I revealed every part of myself to you, and I need you to love me, and yeah, yeah, and for me, that had to be gentle.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, on a final note, I do briefly want to sneak in one How to Get Away with Murder related question, because next week is the 4-year anniversary of the series finale, which is insane. And I would just be curious to hear from you, you know, what it was like letting go of this show, this 6-year experience, and letting go of Michaela, you know, at the beginning of this crazy time that was the pandemic. Because I know as a viewer, it was incredibly hard. So I can't even begin to imagine how it must have been for you and the rest of the cast and crew.
Yeah, I mean, you know, none of us saw the pandemic coming, so I
That's
did
safe
it
to say.
like right when we were finishing that show, like we were all feeling so good about what we had accomplished because we felt like we told the story and we felt like we told the story well, like we honored our characters and we honored our viewership. And they got, you know, because I hate it when shows end and they were like cut short and those actors didn't get that, you know, that sense of like, you know,
Closure.
closure. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. That closure. And we had that closure because we wrapped in February of 2020. And then the next month the pandemic happened. That was painful. Yes. But yeah, I'm just glad we got to tell our story in full.
I think about that at least like once a week that you guys wrapped in February because it was so close to not wrapping. And there were so many shows that weren't able to wrap. So I think we're all just as a fan, and we're also just very glad that that you were able to, you know, have closure. Um,
Yes.
yes. Well, Aja, thank you so much for your time today, for walking me through lessons in chemistry and how to get away with murder. And
Thank
yeah, it was a
you.
pleasure to talk to you.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for your time.